The spectacular 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai has just concluded. Krillin arrives at the tournament arena just briefly after the tournament. He just came to pick up something he accidentally left behind. However, Krillin never gets to fulfill this objective. Goku comes to check up on Krillin only to realize that his best friend's life had perished. Filled with anger that he has never felt before, Goku goes to seek revenge. With Yajirobe's help, he manages to defeat Demon King Piccolo's minion Tambourine. However, Demon King Piccolo was an opponent who was far above Kid Goku's pay grade. Goku's advances are all effortlessly repelled by Demon King Piccolo. Demon King Piccolo doesn't let up as he brutally beats Goku senseless. As Goku falls to the ground, finally unconscious, his heart seemingly stops. However, Demon King Piccolo doesn't leave anything to chance as he obliterates Goku with a ki blast, leaving nothing behind but ashes. Goku's life has been forfeited, unlike the original canon of events, where he survived just by the skin of his teeth. How will this affect the events to come? Well, these are questions we'll answer today on Dragon Ball. In the other world, King Yama looks at Goku's soul as he ponders. Keeping your body in the afterlife was a privilege only given to those who had performed miraculous and heroic deeds. Kid Goku up to this point honestly hadn't done too much. Yes, he was pure of heart, but that wasn't even one of the many criterias. Yes, he stopped the Red Ribbon Army, but he did so by mercilessly slaughtering all the Red Ribbon Army soldiers. King Yama decides to send Goku's soul to heaven, not allowing Goku to keep his body. Just like that, Goku's life ends. No repeats, no second chances. Of course, there are the Dragon Balls. However, Demon King Piccolo completely erases any chances of that happening. First, he wishes for his youth and then kills Shenron immediately. All hope seems to be lost as even the great mutant Roshi fails the Mafuba technique as he falls to the ground seemingly dead as well. Now, only Tien, Chaozu, Yamcha and Yajirobe are left to counter Demon King Piccolo. Yajirobe, like in canon, doesn't do much and instead chooses to cower away. As usual, Tien and Chaozu would confront Demon King Piccolo, this time around with Yamcha at their side as well, unlike canon, where Yamcha is nowhere to be seen. Unfortunately, even the likes of Drum completely overwhelms and destroys all three fighters. Tien, Chaozu and Yamcha eventually all succumb to Demon King Piccolo's might. Demon King Piccolo lays his claim on the world, with no one on earth left to oppose him. Under Demon King Piccolo's rule, everyone's way of life changes drastically, and not for the better. Demon King Piccolo sets his children everywhere around Earth as they oppress the various humans and creatures present. Kami stands upon Kami's lookout, looking down in shame. This disastrous outcome was wholly his fault. That was his world, and he wouldn't allow anyone to suffer any longer. It was up to him to resolve the issue of Demon King Piccolo. Sensing Demon King Piccolo's power, Kami knew that he wouldn't be able to match him. Demon King Piccolo had outmaneuvered him, but no longer. Kami nods at a crying Popo as he lowers his power level as much as possible, allowing Popo to end him with a single punch. Kami drops to the ground as he passes away. Demon King Piccolo suddenly feels a weird sensation as his body starts to disappear. Demon King Piccolo yells in indignation. That old fart had actually done it. Demon King Piccolo never knew that Kami had the guts to do something like this. However, before he knew it, he was also gone. Witnessing Demon King Piccolo's demise, the entire human race celebrated. This day, the March of 18th, will be remembered as a dark and horrifying event for many years to come. Unfortunately, these days of peace would not last very long either. Everyone's feelings of happiness and relief will unfortunately only be very brief. However, there is one particular person who is immensely dissatisfied. He wasn't ever afraid of Demon King Piccolo. No, Demon King Piccolo was nothing more but research data to him. This person had been inhabiting the mountainous areas and was biding his time. However, his opportunity of revenge was stolen from right under his nose. He clenches his fist and smashes his desk in anger. Dr. Gero looks back up, forcing himself to remain calm and composed. Yes, Son Goku was dead, but that didn't mean all his research was wasted. No, he himself never had any wishes for world conquest or domination. He was satisfied just being a scientist for the Red Ribbon Army until Son Goku took that from him. Guess he now had a new goal to take over the world. Looks like it wouldn't be very difficult either. Demon King Piccolo had mysteriously vanished. Nothing no longer stood in his path. Gero would rebuild the Red Ribbon Army greater than ever. Androids 19 and 20 appear and descends the world into utter chaos and despair once more. Gero recruits many like-minded individuals into his cause, like Commander Red's son Magenta and Mercenary Tao, but he chooses to leave his own family out of it. With that, we go all the way to the start of Dragon Ball Z. Raditz arrives on Earth. Utilizing his scouter, he goes towards the nearest highest power level. Raditz comes face to face with some sort of cyborg. This person was none other than Mercenary Tao, who had received significant powerful mechanical upgrades thanks to Dr. Gero. Raditz was disappointed. Kakarot didn't do his job, and he also couldn't sense Kakarot's power level either, which means Kakarot had failed and perished. Raditz laughs. He will have to pick up Kakarot's neck and destroy Earth in his stead. Tao manages to spot Raditz's tail, and immediately knew that the man in front of him was bad news. The child he had fought quite a while back also had a tail, and he was abnormally strong for his age. Tao knew to not let his guard down, and his insight managed to just save him from Raditz's quick assault. Raditz's speed was impeccable, and Tao barely manages to dodge out of the way from Raditz's punches. Raditz was at a power level of 1500, while Tao with Gero's upgrades was already an impressive 900. But even then, Raditz was way above Tao's pay grade. Tao was completely on the defensive as Raditz slowly chips away at his defense. Tao suddenly presses a button in his arm, which sends his arm flying out, knocking Raditz off balance. Given a moment's reprieve, Tao frantically presses the big red button on his other arm. Raditz cocks his eyebrow in amusement. Was he calling for backup? Well, Raditz decided to go all out from here on out. This man was strong, and if a few more allies joined together to fight him, it definitely would be trouble. Raditz pushes on, now going all out. Tao never stood a chance, as Raditz nearly dismantles him completely, starting with his arms. However, before Raditz could completely overwhelm Tao, another android makes his appearance. It was Android 19. Android 19 descends onto the same level as Raditz. Raditz looks at Android 19 warily. If Tao was already this powerful, this meant that this android was at least on the same level. Raditz puts his hands in front of himself, guarding himself. However, before he could react, he suddenly felt a huge force exerted on his back as he flies forward. Raditz yells in pain as Android 19 suddenly appears back in front of him and strikes him down on the ground. The impact creates a huge crater where Raditz lays defeated, completely bewildered that he had lost the fight in just 2 attacks. Android 19 picks up the injured Raditz as he places his hand on Raditz's face. Raditz feels his energy leaving his body as he feels weaker and weaker. Android 19 shoots a laser beam from his eyes that literally carves Raditz in half. Raditz has no time to even react as his life perishes right before his eyes. Android 19 destroys Raditz's scouter, as well as acknowledging that the scouter was a communication device, as he brings the dismantled parts of Tao back to Gero. Android 19 reports the situation to Gero, another humanoid alien that had a tail. Gero was sure that there was no way this was a coincidence. Looks like his suspicions were true. Son Goku was indeed an alien, and the presence of the scouter meant that there was likely going to be more of such aliens arriving on Earth soon. How soon, he didn't know, but he did know they had to prepare themselves as much as possible. Gero repairs Tao and gives Tao a significant power upgrade, putting Tao near the level of Android 19. Keep in mind though that this version of Android 19 is still significantly weaker than the one in canon, as the canon version of Android 19 spent 4-5 years extra being developed. If 19, Tao and himself weren't enough, he still had his trump cards. Though not fully complete yet, Android 17 and 18 were definitely his strongest creations thus far. As Gero prepares, a full year passes. Vegeta and Nappa had embarked towards Earth like canon. They were interested about the beings present on Earth. Earth was supposedly a low-level planet, but he had fighters that could wipe the floor with Raditz. Vegeta and Nappa arrive on the planet like usual, obliterating a city as they come. But this time around, unlike Raditz, they don't need to go and search for a fight. Gero had decided to bring the fight to them instead. And after Raditz's unexpected appearance, Gero had set up his network of spy bots all around Earth to monitor the situation on Earth everywhere. Some of them even deployed specifically to monitor ships going in and out of Earth's atmosphere. His spy bots had detected 2 spaceports coming towards Earth, so Gero immediately deployed his forces to Vegeta and Nappa's location. Specifically, only Tao and 19, but Gero was confident that they would be good enough for the job. Tao and 19 face off against Vegeta and Nappa. Vegeta and Nappa look at mercenary Tao and Android 19 with an expression of curiosity. Vegeta steps forward, asking whether they knew the Saiyan called Raditz. However, mercenary Tao and Android 19 didn't speak. They chose to remain silent. Instead, they suddenly charged forward, immediately with 19 facing Vegeta and Tao facing Nappa. Tao has been upgraded immensely in the past year. He was becoming more and more like a full android and less like a cyborg. But in exchange for the loss of his humanity, Tao was ridiculously powerful. With a power level of about 15,000, Tao was treating Nappa like his personal punching bag. Nappa couldn't even fight back. Meanwhile, 19's power level can't be measured, but his combat strength actually surpasses that of Vegeta. Vegeta immediately realizes that he is in deep trouble when 19's attack starts penetrating his defense. 19 punches Vegeta solidly in the stomach, sending Vegeta tumbling to the ground, gasping for air. Vegeta tries to shake off the damage that 19 had inflicted, but he realized he was hurt more than he thought. This Android 19 was a serious foe, one Vegeta couldn't take lightly. Looking at Nappa showed Nappa faring even worse than he was. Vegeta yells at Nappa to create a fake moon. He would do it himself, but it takes up a lot of energy. Nappa temporarily ignores Tao and instead focuses his ki into his palm. During that brief moment of distraction, Tao finally puts an end to Nappa, plunging a hand straight through Nappa's chest. Nappa coughs out blood, falling to the ground, but in his passing moments manages to throw up a fake moon. Vegeta grins as he looks up into the sky as he starts to transform. The sudden surge in ki from Vegeta knocks 19 and Tao back. Vegeta transforms into a giant Great Ape as he now towers over the 2 Red Ribbon Army fighters. Vegeta smiles as he rains a flurry of strong and fast punches towards the 2. Despite his huge size, he was still extremely agile. 19 and Tao managed to dodge out of the way in time, but Vegeta doesn't let up. Vegeta continues punching and kicking and eventually lands a hit on Tao, sending him flying away. Vegeta grins at Android 19. He'll make sure that 19 suffers the humiliation he felt. However, suddenly Vegeta was sent flying backwards into the mountains. Gero himself has finally joined the fight. Gero tells 19 and Tao to evacuate as he flies forward. Vegeta now gets up, utterly pissed off. He lunges at Gero. However, Gero doesn't even bother to dodge as he simply stands there, waiting for Vegeta's punch. Vegeta yells and he throws the most powerful punch he could muster at Gero, but somehow his punch stops. Vegeta looks in disbelief as Gero holds his punch off with his palm without any difficulty whatsoever. Gero scoffs. He hoped that this would provide more of a challenge, but oh well. Gero shoots a laser through Vegeta's heart as Vegeta stumbles back before his entire Grade 8 frame collapses on the ground, immobile and unmoving. Vegeta de-transforms, but by that time, he had already lost his life. Just like that, the Saiyan invasion was stopped in its tracks by Dr. Gero, but with Nappa and even Vegeta's life forfeit. In another part of the universe, Frieza was curious about what had occurred with his 3 Saiyan henchmen. Raditz had dropped off the radar a year ago, and now the other 2 were also gone at the same place. Frieza drums his fingers on his floating chair. Could they be playing some form of trick? Had they gone off the radar in order to plot a rebellion against him? Frieza couldn't help but speculate. After all, the Saiyans were treacherous monkeys. Frieza never trusted them and he knew they didn't trust him either. Frieza presses on his scouter several times. Hearing Ginyu's voice, Frieza tells Ginyu to listen to him closely. There was a planet he wanted them to investigate. Planet 4032 Green 877, a planet in the northern quadrant of the universe. If they saw anything suspicious, they would immediately report back to him. Ginyu immediately agrees before cutting off the connection. He was ecstatic. Lord Frieza hadn't given them a personal mission in a long while. Ginyu immediately strikes a goofy pose as the rest of the Ginyu force follow suit as they make their way into the space pods and towards planet Earth. As usual, the spy bot network Gero had set up detects the Ginyu force's arrival first. Seeing the space pods look similar to the ones that Vegeta and Nappa had, Gero thinks that the intruder could be more Saiyans. But he was proven wrong when 5 alien-like looking creatures come out instead. They spoke the universal language, so Gero could spy on their conversation. One further thing to note would be their uniforms that bore an uncanny resemblance to Vegeta and Nappa's Saiyan armor. Gero immediately presses a button on his desk as alarms start bearing, and 5 Red Ribbon Army soldiers fly towards the direction of the Ginyu force. They were none other than Tao, Android 19, and 3 new additions, Magenta, and Androids 14 and 15. They were part of the special elite force from the Red Ribbon Army and were used to neutralize potential threats to Earth. After Tao and 19's loss to Grade 8 Vegeta, Gero had upgraded them as much as possible in order to ensure that such a loss wouldn't occur again. And of course, he had to recruit more fighters to the cause as well. 2 was simply not enough. Now, let's go back to the Ginyu force. The Ginyu force were about to split up to cover more ground, but their scouters sensed 2 impending power level signals. One was Tao and the other was Magenta, because they were still cyborgs, not full androids. The other 3 were androids and had no traceable power level. The 5 fighters land on the ground warily in front of the Ginyu force. Ginyu steps up, asking whether 3 individuals with tails had come over to this planet. 19, the leader of the group, immediately confirms Ginyu's suspicions. Yes, they were here, but they were killed by them. However, Instead of immediately assaulting them, to Android 19's confusion, the Ginyu Force instead start laughing among themselves. Lord Frieza will be pleased. Ginyu taps on his scouter, informing Frieza of the Saiyan's demise. Obviously, Frieza was extremely pleased about the development. It was about time. Those pesky Saiyans had survived for far too long. Frieza tells Ginyu that he'll leave the planet to them. If it was a planet worth selling, Ginyu could take it by force. If not, he could just destroy it and leave it be. Ginyu takes a good look around. They had landed near the city, and there were signs of life prospering on the planet. In fact, the technology here that these so-called Earthlings employ looked to be pretty revolutionary. Ginyu nods his head as he tells the Ginyu Force to move out. It was time for the Ginyu Force to take over this planet. The Ginyu Force performed their signature pose, however, they were interrupted by Android 19, who sent an eye beam straight towards Gaudo. Gaudo barely avoids it in time as he uses his signature technique. Ginyu meanwhile scowls at them. What the hell were they trying to do? How dare they interrupt them? However, the Red Ribbon Army elite force didn't let up. Magenta approaches Gaudo, while 14 and 15 separate Jace and Bertha. Meanwhile, Tao fights Rikum, and 19 fights Ginyu himself. This method of divide and conquer allows Magenta to quickly dispose of Gaudo, the weakest of the group, such that he could assist androids 14 and 15 with Jace and Bertha. With Magenta's help, Jace and Bertha also kept losing more and more ground, until they eventually succumbed to them as well, leaving only Rikum and Ginyu left. Ginyu grimaces, seeing his subordinates losing their respective fights and losing their lives. He himself was also under the pressure of Android 19, and he couldn't even break through. It has been a while, a very long time indeed, since Ginyu had met someone stronger than him. Ginyu smiles. Guess it was time to switch bodies. He had a heck of a time with this one, but it was time. Ginyu suddenly plunges his hand through his own chest, causing Android 19 to stop with an expression of confusion. Ginyu yells, "Change!" A huge beam comes out from Ginyu's mouth and flies towards Android 19, but it somehow reflects off Android 19 instead of entering Android 19. Ginyu looks on in confusion, but Android 19 doesn't wait any longer as he destroys Ginyu. The body change didn't work successfully on Android 19 because Android 19 was a purely artificial being. Rikum, the only one of the Ginyu Force left, was also quickly dispatched as well. Just like that, the Ginyu Force succumbed to the superior Red Ribbon Army elite force. Frieza tries to contact the Ginyu Force a day later, but fails to make any contact. Frieza ponders. The Ginyu Force had never failed him before. That means, on that planet, there was someone strong enough to easily kill the Ginyu Force. Frieza was actually slightly apprehensive about going towards the planet. After all, the 3 Saiyans and even the Ginyu Force had all perished without any further communication, which means that whatever was on there was able to wipe out all of them almost instantaneously. Frieza still strongly believed that he was the strongest in the universe, well, besides Beerus of course. But this was something he had to be vigilant about. Frieza decides to make his way towards Earth as well, intending to investigate and figure out everything that had occurred on the planet. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Gero continues his upgrading. Seeing the Saiyans and then the Ginyu Force coming successively, Gero knew that couldn't have been the end of it. None of those seemed like the leader, as they all wore similar grunt uniforms. The leader would be distinguishable from the rest, and Gero knew that this leader would definitely come sooner or later. Thus, he had to be as prepared as possible. Gero's prediction will come true as Frieza's ship finally arrives a week later. Frieza's ship hovers over planet Earth. Frieza decides to send Zabon and Dodario as well as Cui and a few Frieza soldiers down as he monitors the situation from above. It wouldn't hurt to play a little safe. As Frieza's army descends downward, Gero is alerted to their presence by his spybot network. This wasn't just a small force sent to scout their planet. This was definitely a full-fledged invasion. Zero presses a red button as alarms start bearing around the base. Many Red Ribbon Army soldiers were deployed as some donned power suits, while some were utilizing big machines. The Red Ribbon Army elite force was also deployed as well, but this time with Zero at the helm. Frieza's army versus the Red Ribbon Army. The average Frieza soldier has a power level of 1300, which is actually pretty high. But during the past few years, Zero hasn't been standing idly by. No, he was constantly trying to increase the level of the average Red Ribbon Army soldier, equipping them with powerful gear and armor. So all Red Ribbon Army soldiers were equipped with a power suit similar to that of Magenta's, that was raising their power level dramatically, putting them at around 1500. Some were even utilizing big machines that had a combat strength of 3000. Zarbon and Dodario went in originally confident. After all, they were Frieza's elite, but they were in for a rude awakening. Androids 14 and 15 themselves immediately went after Zarbon and Dodario, and without any hesitation exterminated them, not even allowing Zarbon a chance to transform. Magenta himself also went after Cui, and easily dispatches him as well. Frieza's army was falling apart at the seams, but Frieza, who was still a bystander, wasn't worried at all. After all, he himself was basically a one-man army anyways, and looking at the Red Ribbon Army thus far, none of them utilized any cheap abilities or techniques that he had to worry about. Frieza makes his entrance, launching a ki ball that disperses the clouds. Frieza descends as his remaining army hides behind him in fear. Frieza steps out from his spot as he walks forward. Zero does the same, meeting Frieza in the middle of the battlefield. Zero knew that Frieza couldn't be underestimated. Frieza could instantaneously wipe out the entire planet if he wished, so Zero needed something to rein Frieza in. Zero himself could survive the vacuum of space, but his army couldn't. He wouldn't let his years of hard work all go to waste. So Zero immediately proposed a very tempting offer. A 1v1 fight to the death. But during the fight, Frieza couldn't resort to destroying the planet. If Zero loses, the entire Red Ribbon Army, along with the entire planet Earth, would surrender and go under Frieza's rule. If Frieza loses, however, Frieza's army will leave planet Earth and never come back. Frieza laughs mockingly. He had utmost confidence in his abilities. He'll make sure that this Zero person faces utter terror and horror that he has never felt before. The fight quickly commences, Frieza only sticking to his first form for now, which he immediately realizes isn't enough as Zero easily repels all of his attacks. Zero also wasn't taking the fight seriously at all. If he wanted to, he could eradicate first form Frieza right here and then, before Frieza even had the chance to transform. But Zero had never faced a challenge before, ever since he had become an android. Frieza would serve as testing grounds for how high his own power could go. Frieza transforms into his second form, however that form does nothing to Zero either. Frieza decides to show off his third form transformation. However, Zero was still unfazed by anything Frieza threw out. Frieza was secretly getting a little worried, but he shakes off his concerns. After all, his final form was leagues above anything he had shown prior. Frieza decides to finally go all out, going to his final form and even going straight to 100%. Full power Frieza launches a barrage of punches at Zero, his punches literally shaking the entire planet. Zero was surprised by Frieza's sudden power jump and tries to dodge Frieza's punches, but Frieza's speed has finally caught up to Zero's as Frieza lands a devastating punch on Zero, sending Zero flying back. Zero catches himself in the air as he smiles. Finally a worthy opponent to test his true strength. Zero holds nothing back as this time he goes on the offensive, kicking, punching, attacking Frieza relentlessly. Frieza tries to block Zero's attacks, but Zero constantly bypasses his defense, managing to hurt Frieza greatly. Frieza lands on the ground, heaving and weaving. He was in a state of denial and anger. He he couldn't believe that Zero was actually above him in terms of power. However, Frieza immediately concocted a plan. He needn't follow the rules of this fight that Zero had set. After all, he was the only one that could survive the vacuum of space. Frieza smiles as he charges up an attack and launches it downwards. However, Zero had already predicted something like this would happen. He lunges forward and goes in front of the key blast, hand stretched outwards as he completely absorbs and nullifies it. Frieza stares in shock. However, that would be the last thing that Frieza ever sees, as Zero launches an I-beam cutting straight through Frieza's body. Frieza dies right there on the spot. Seeing their leader get mercilessly slaughtered causes the rest of Frieza's army to surrender to Dr. Gero. Gero takes charge of the rest of Frieza's forces, and that was when Frieza's secondary advisor Piccolo informs Zero about the other potential threats, like Frieza's father King Cole, as well as the remaining Frieza forces over at Frieza Planet 79. It's safe to say that King Cole stands absolutely no chance against Zero, so Zero easily takes over the entire Frieza force. With two big armies in his grasp, Zero has basically succeeded in his mission for world dominance. Obviously, the Cell Saga won't happen because Zero never creates Cell, but the Buu Saga will still occur due to the likes of Magenta and Mercenary Tao, who were still partially human and emitting high enough energies to lure Babidi to planet Earth. Babidi, with his mind-controlling magic, is a force to be reckoned with, but unfortunately for Babidi, as soon as Babidi even enters Earth's atmosphere, Zero is immediately alerted to his presence, and Babidi's magic is rendered useless against artificial beings like androids 14, 15, and 19. Dabura and then Babidi are killed successively. Meanwhile, without a Saiyan on Earth, Beerus has no incentive to ever travel to Earth, and with Zero's iron grip over the Frieza force, no Frieza supporter will ever get their hands on the Dragon Balls to revive Frieza, not like there were any left on Earth anyways. Without Goku's meeting with Zamasu, Zamasu isn't pushed to become Goku Black, and Zero will never ever meet Zenon enemies. Just like that, we reach the end of this series. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.